Everybody. Just let me know if you can hear me in the comments. That'd be great. I want to thank you guys all for stopping by. See how this goes. Hopefully, I'll try to do an hour or so, and we'll go from there. Let's see what we got in the chat. Just a couple people. It's all right. I was pretty much going to start with just going through some of my designs, and it's an older webcam, so I haven't upgraded. Great, glad you guys can hear me. So basically, I was just going to go through and talk about some of my designs, and if you guys have any questions, you can just fire them at me. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And so it's kind of funny. This is basically just a oh boy, Chris is here. Thanks guys for coming. I really appreciate it. So it's funny, like this is basically just going to be a look back at my past year and the designs I've done. So it was kind of interesting thinking about this and thinking about what I'd be talking about and questions people would be asking and things like that. So one of the favorite builds I did was basically this robot, which I recreated from a UC Berkeley paper, and I just saw it and I was entranced by it. I thought it was the coolest design because basically the wings can kind of articulate, so it can change its height really easily. And they had done some videos where they basically showed it going under a door. And so as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to recreate this. I have to try to make this. And they basically just did the paper. And yes, this is the one that goes under the door. So they just did the paper, but they didn't release any files or anything like that. So they just had some kind of, they gave you an idea of how to do it. So basically I had to look at that paper and then kind of redo the whole design in CAD and figure out what motors to use and what electronics to do and things like that. So this was definitely like a challenging one, especially in terms of the electronics, because you're cramming a ton of stuff in this space, and then it has to be thin enough to basically go under the door. And so what would basically happen was when I was shooting that take to go into the door, that took so many takes because a lot of what was happening is the wires on the motor would get caught and it would stop it from going into the door. So I just had to keep shooting it over and over until I got a couple of takes where it went under the door. So that was definitely a fun build and a lot of work, but I really enjoyed this one. So, and I had some interest from people who like, oh yeah, I want to build that. And so the files are on Thingiverse. Like for most of my designs, the files are on Thingiverse, so you can try to make them. But I haven't actually seen anybody else kind of recreate this one. So, but I see more people coming in the chat. So thanks again. I really appreciate you guys joining. And if you have any questions about any of my designs, fire them away in chat, and I'll try to answer them as I come. I'm just going to kind of go through some of my designs I've done. So if you as I'm talking about something, if you have a question, just let me know. One of the earlier designs I did was the time turner from Harry Potter. And like with most of my designs, I like to have things that have some kind of motion, have a mechanism or something like that. Like those are things that I like to design and that I think I'm decent at designing. So most of my things move around to some degree and aren't really static. And like this one, the hourglass I found on Etsy, and so it actually has real sanded and everything like that. And I thought that was just a nice touch. I hadn't really seen that on anywhere else on Thingiverse. So all right, so I see a question. When it comes to designing, are you self-taught or was it through work or school? So for me, it's definitely through work. So like I'm a mechanical engineer. So on my day job, this is pretty much what I do. I'm using SolidWorks pretty much all day long. So I'm pretty skilled at SolidWorks, and that's where I can design things pretty rapidly. So it's definitely from my job. So I see another question on the baseball bat. So I haven't released the files on the baseball bat. A few people have contacted me about building it, and so I will kind of send it out on a a onesie and twosie basis. So if you're really interested, shoot me an email or whatever, and we can talk about that. So back to the time turner. So this was again one of my earlier designs, and it was one of my more popular models on Thingiverse. And then I got a DMCA notice from Warner Brothers. So basically what happened was Warner Brothers went through the site, and I think they just searched by a couple of keywords, and they come across models that are popular, and then they'll send a notice to Thingiverse. Thingiverse flags it, and then if you don't dispute it, it gets taken down. So basically this model is no longer available on Thingiverse. It is, however, available on other 3D printing websites, so you could still find the files if you want to print them out. Hey, Chris, thanks a lot for showing up. I really appreciate it. All right, so I see another question. C-3PO in the background. Yes, that definitely is printed. That was actually my very first video. Please do not go and watch those videos because I'm sure they are so bad. I haven't braved enough to go back and watch them, but man, I was just starting out. So yeah, but yes, the C-3PO is definitely 3D printed. I didn't design the model. I found the model. But I made it so the eyes would light up and he would talk. So he basically had an Arduino that would slide up through the neck, and there were a bunch of buttons on the bottom. And so I could hold him in my hand and press different buttons and have him say different wave files. So it would kind of appear like he was talking, and you could have a conversation with him. And so for the premiere of, I think, The Last Jedi, I brought him there, and I was holding him and like having him talk to kids and things like that. So, but all right. So yeah, C-3PO does have electronics. Not right now, because I basically took the electronics out and used them for a different project. So he's kind of just a hollow shell right now, unfortunately. But all right. So let's see. Somebody else grabbed the Thingiverse file for the Harry Potter time turner, which is great. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So that's it so far. So another model I did recently after that was the Neuralyzer from Men in Black, and I also saw they're coming out with a new Men in Black movie, and the trailer looks decent. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, but this was a fun build, and again, like most of my designs, it has some sort of mechanism or motion. So this one, actually, you can just pull the handle, and it's spring loaded, and it pops up. And I also had it so that the button on here would light up the LED, and making this little window was pretty challenging, and that actually wasn't 3D printed. So I took a piece of red tinted acrylic, and I cut it to size, and then I actually made a little fixture where I could use a heat gun and heat up the acrylic window, get it so it was hot, put it inside the fixture, and then clamp it together, and then kind of form it in that curve that I needed here. And that ended up working out pretty well. So I'm not sure if that made it into the video. I think I ended up only doing the video on so I did two versions of this. I did one that was like minimally painted, like it was basically just off the printer, and then it had the piece in here was just painted red. And so it was basically, I called it the easy build. So it was like minimally painted. This was the one that I went kind of all out on, where I, painted it the chrome color, and I made the window. And I don't think I ever ended up making a video for the more complicated version, because I didn't think anyone would build it. So, but hey, Paul, thanks for showing up. I really appreciate it. Let's see. And one of the things I was going to talk about a little bit later was, for some of the designing things, one thing that I use a lot of is magnets, and so this is another one of my models that uses magnets. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But so I see another question: what project is the most time-consuming by far? So it's definitely either the robot, this guy, or the mouse droid. I have a feeling it's the mouse droid, which is back there. That one took a long time, both designing, printing it out, and just filming and all that kind of stuff. That one took a long time, for sure. And I think that's probably been the longest. definitely the most expensive too. So a lot of these builds, they do that cost does add up too. But and the mouse droid, I basically took the mouse droid to the Boston Maker Faire, which was a ton of fun. And so I was driving around, and people were really interacting with it. Kids loved it. Kids were chasing it around, and they were just fascinated by it. And that's actually been one of my favorite videos. So if I had to recommend a video of mine to go watch, I would say go watch that one. And it's basically, I think it's called Amazing Reactions to the Mouse Droid or something like that. And it's basically footage that I took from 2 days at the Maker Faire and kind of made it into a video. And that was a lot of fun. And just some of the reactions that I got were really great. And I took so much footage for that. I mean, I basically had a camera inside the mouse droid, and then I had a camera that I had mounted on my shoulder, and those are basically just running all day for 2 days. So I had so much footage that I had to go through and kind of pick out these reactions that I kind of ended up splicing together in the video. And so that one just shows a lot of, what the mouse droid can do and how people reacted to it. And I hadn't seen another mouse droid do something like that, where it basically has a door that flips open and you see a scrolling LED sign. So that's another kind of theme with my designs and things like that, is I want to do something different. I want to do something that hasn't been done before. So I kind of looked around to see what had been done with the mouse droids and kind of decided, I want to try to add a door that flips open and, a scrolling sign that I can kind of try to interact with people. And so yeah, so with my designs, I try to see if someone has done it before. And if not, that kind of dampens it for me, unless I think I can do it, take it to the next level kind of thing. So, hey, see a couple more people that I know showing up. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys showing up. Okay, so Chris is asking, where did the design idea from the linear actuator come? So that was part of the mouse droid. So I needed something to open the door. And it was kind of, the mechanism is 2 parts. One, I need a way to open the door and have it drop over center. So gravity basically drops it the rest of the way open. And then I need a way to close it. And so basically I used that linear actuator, which is this guy right here. This is actually the bigger one. So it uses a very cheap servo, continuous rotation servo, to turn this rotational motion into linear motion. So I use this servo to basically knock the door open over center, so then the gravity drops it home. And then there's a stepper motor that has a reel, like a fishing reel, that has fishing line on it that basically drops the door down very gently and then holds it open. And then when I want to close it, the stepper motor basically reels up the fishing line and closes it. So it's pretty simple. And but Chris was asking where the idea came for this. So I needed something to open the door, and then I was kind of looking around for linear actuators, and I actually came across another design that did something similar to this, but it was a lot more complicated. There were, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 parts to the assembly. I looked at the files; they didn't look that robust, and so I'm like, okay, I think I can do this a little bit better, and I can do it simpler. And basically, the magic of this is there's a dovetail mechanism on the pusher end and on the bracket end. So it's 3 pieces. There's the pusher, there's the bracket, and then there's the pinion gear that goes directly onto the motor. So it's 3 parts. And so I designed it myself, and I tried to make them robust and so that they would print well. And then I made a bunch of different sizes for the actuators, so people could, if they needed a short one, they could have a short one. If they needed a long one, they could have a long one. So I found that design, and I basically made it kind of my own, try to make it better and more robust. And people have really seemed to like this one, enjoy it. It's basically it is my most popular video now. It's become my most popular Thingiverse file, ahead of the Star Wars ring, which had been the one that was the most popular before. And something else that I've seen that I thought was really cool was that I've seen a lot of teachers and like people in STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and math, using these in the classroom. And there was actually one guy on Twitter who was sharing a lot of pictures where he printed out, I don't know, it must have been 15, 20 of these things, and was using them in the classroom and giving them to kids, and they were just designing all kinds of crazy things with them. And that was just so cool to see. And I actually had a guy contact me where he works in prosthetics, 3D printed prosthetics, and he wanted to use that actuator in their kind of open source prosthetics design. So I haven't heard back if it worked or anything like that. And so hopefully I'll hear back and see, but I think that would be just so cool if he ended up using that kind of, open source mechanism in the prosthetics design. So, so that's the story on the linear actuator. And I'm actually working on something kind of along the same lines, kind of another open source kind of mechanism that hopefully people can do and teachers can use and things like that. So that video should be coming out soon. So James is asking, what's my next big project? And he loved the Etch-a-Sketch design. Well, thank you. And I'll talk about the Etch-a-Sketch design in a little bit. So I have basically 3 projects going on right now. One of them is kind of a longer term Star Wars build, which I'm pretty excited about. So I've been working a lot on that. And that one may not come out for a little while, but that's kind of ongoing. And I have that other kind of open source mechanism project that I have going on. That should come out, not my next video, but the video after that. And then I have another old and new episode that I've been working on. And so that was for the cell phone Etch-a-Sketch. I started a new series called Old and New, which basically where I want to kind of look at older mechanisms, older designs, things like that, and either recreate them or reimagine them using 3D printing. And that's basically what I did with the cell phone Etch-a-Sketch. So I don't really know where I got the idea from, but I was thinking about, older things, and I kind of thought about, oh, an Etch-a-Sketch, that's a pretty cool thing. I wonder if I could recreate that, was my first thought, And then I was thinking, oh, well, what if I modernize it and try to make it so you could use a phone and use a stylus to basically be able to have a device where you could put your phone on it, and then you could have a stylus that would interact with the touch screen and let you turn it into a digital Etch-a-Sketch. And so I had the idea for the design. I was going to use another rack and pinion mechanism. That's, I really like that with the linear actuator. And, I figured out I could get the controls to be somewhat similar to an Etch-a-Sketch. And one of the big things with this one was I knew I was going to do one axis like this that had the stylus on it, but the other axis I had originally started where the phone was kind of statically mounted, and the x-axis was going to just be another rack and pinion that this was mounted on. But I ended up having a lot of troubles with that, and I finally decided to, okay, well, what if I made the whole platform that the phone sits on move? And so that was kind of a breakthrough with this one, and that kind of led me to this design. And the other funny thing about this story was the phone and the cell phone. So I was just kind of naively thinking, oh, well, I'll just buy a stylus and plop it on here and it'll work. And so when I first printed this out and started doing it, it wasn't working. And I'm like, oh, why isn't this working? And then, with some research, eventually I figured out, oh, well, for certain phones, it needs to be tied back to the human body, because basically Mitch says it. So your body, the capacitance of your body actually is what helps to trigger the phone and the screen. And so I had to kind of work through that problem. So, and it was kind of lucky that my phone, which is a Google phone, an Android phone, it's a Samsung Galaxy S7. Basically, all I had to do was add a little wire, and that was enough capacitance to trigger my phone. But when I tried to use Apple devices, those phones are much more, have a much higher sensitivity, so that I couldn't just add lengths of wire to get that to trigger. I had to tie it back to your body. So I was kind of like, oh, how am I going to do that? And then I remembered at work, I had seen a lot of these grounding straps where people working with electronics will have a strap that basically goes on their wrist and has a little metal disc, and then they can clip into something, and that will basically ground their body. So then that was how I was able to do that, was run a wire out this y-axis, and then have the grounding strap clip onto that. And so you could work it with, yes, an ESD strap, exactly. So then it would work with Apple devices. So So that was the big story with this guy. That was kind of a hadn't intended that to happen, but you know, I was able to work through it and get it to work for most cell phones. So, all right, you guys have any other questions for me, or I guess I can just keep going through the list here. Another design I did was this iris pendant. So basically, it's similar to the rings, like the rings I had done. The rings I'd done were some of the earlier ones where basically it's an iris ring, a functional iris ring. And I had done that when I saw Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I was sitting in the movie theater, and there was a scene where one of the characters has an iris ring, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. I bet you I could make that. I bet you I could design that, and I bet you I could print it. So then I went home and I started looking into iris mechanisms, and I found some iris mechanisms on Thingiverse, and I took one and I kind of dissected it and was like, okay, I can use this. And so then I adapted it to be that ring, and I ended up making that ring. And you know, that was one of my more popular videos early on. And a bit of a sad story, when I went to the Boston Makers Fair, I had my table and I was walking around a lot. You know, I was by myself. I was walking around a lot, you know, driving the mouse droid and taking footage. So I wasn't at my table, and I came back and the ring was gone. So the Star Wars ring disappeared. I was hoping someone would bring it back, but it's never surfaced again. So I unfortunately I don't have that one to show you. But anyway, so I took that iris design and I wanted to scale it up, to make it into something bigger that was a little bit easier to build, because the rings, just to be so small and have the iris ring, have the iris mechanism work, I had to use these really tiny screws that are hard to find and they're hard to work with. So I think a lot of people haven't built this one as many as I thought, because those screws are, like I said, hard to find and a pain to work with. So I scaled it up because I wanted to see if people would make, would end up building it if it was easier to make. And so I made this pendant, which you can hang, you know, on a chain or whatever, and you can put whatever picture you wanted to. So I made a bunch of different ones where I had different pictures in them. I had one that was a benchy, so it's got a little, it's a the kind of the outer ring that you use to toggle it is made of benchies. And I had a benchy at the center of them. That's actually like the thumbnail, I think. And but this one is David Hasselhoff. I don't know if you can see that one with my poor cell phone, my poor video camera here. But so this uses much bigger screws and it should be much easier to make. So these files are on Thingiverse, and I also made it so that people can kind of design their own faceplate. So if they wanted to take that design and make it their own, they could. There's that one. So the bat. So a lot of people asked about the bat. So I think this is probably one of my the coolest props that I've made. So some of these ideas I really don't know where they come from. I was just kind of thinking of what props can I make that have some sort of motion, have a mechanism that I like to design. And I was thinking of Back to the Future. It's like, oh, that bat was really cool. I wonder if I could build that and have it, you know, automatically open. And so I had all kinds of much more complicated ways of doing this. I was thinking about using a lead screw and all this kind of stuff. And then I was talking to a guy at work, a great guy, really smart. And we were just talking about ideas. And then he's like, what if you use a gas spring? And I'm like, that is an awesome idea. That is a really good idea. So I kind of was thinking about that, and I had to go and look and see if I could buy some and that kind of stuff. And then I was like, okay, I can get some that are about the right size, that have a pretty good stroke, that kind of thing. But how am I gonna latch it closed? Because, you know, the gas spring, it stays open. You have to apply a lot of force to close it and keep it closed. And the one I found, I think, had 25 pound force. So I needed 25 pounds of force to keep it closed, and that's not insignificant. I mean, I could barely close it with my hands, or, you know, using my body weight, it's a lot easier. So then I was thinking of, okay, well, what if I use magnets? And So I started playing around with that, and I was eventually able to get it to work. And that's basically what you see here. So, so it's basically the gas spring. The magnets are working, and it's pretty stable. If I move it around and apply a little force to it, it doesn't go anywhere. But when I push up on it with my thumb, that triggers it, and it breaks the contact of the magnets, and then it opens. And so it's really robust. There are no electronics, no batteries, nothing like that. I mean, I've actuated it so many times. You can actually, I don't know if you can see it, but it's wearing away the paint. And I brought it to Earth and was showing it to a lot of people. And so it's been probably one of the best props that I've made. And, I've been really happy with how it came out. And that was a really fun build, and just getting it to work. And I remember the first couple of times I was opening it, having it open automatically. I was like, I was just like, that's so awesome. But yeah. So yeah, Mitch, I don't know. I was kind of in the back, so you probably missed it there. But again, so I have a couple of videos on this guy and how it works. And I actually did some testing to see how strong it was. And it was pretty dang strong, mostly because there's a metal gas spring at the center of it, but that was a lot of fun too. So let's see. So we talked about C-3PO. I don't know, back there's also the Avengers sign, which is kind of these, each of the letters is on a 3D is on a gear, so that when I turn them they kind of pivot. And I had the idea, I was really excited for Avengers Infinity War to come out, and I wanted to do something for that. And I think I was watching Age of Ultron or something like that, and I saw the opening title sequence where the Avengers kind of pivots. It turns and it becomes the logo, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if I could do something with that, and that ended up turning into to that idea. And so that was a fun one to make too. It was to design all the gears, and then get them to basically mesh together correctly. And shooting the video for that one was fun too, because basically I had it set up on a table and I'm like hiding behind it, turning the letters and trying to not to get my hand in the camera, and that took a lot of takes too, but that was pretty fun. Let's see what else. I think that's most of them. Do you guys have any questions on any of those designs? If not, I can start talking about the some of my tips for designing and things like that. Yeah, Mitch, I'm going to talk a little bit about that towards the end. He's basically talking about my my video on looking at the numbers from other YouTubers and things like that. So, and that was really interesting too. And I really appreciate a lot of people here share the data with me that let me do that. So, where's a good place to find old mechanisms? Oh, that's a great question. Hey, Walter, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. So for old mechanisms, there are a bunch of books out that I found that are a really good place to find them. I have a couple of them here. Like this one, like I just got this one a little while ago. So it's basically 1800 mechanical movements and devices. And so, it goes through a lot of different, mechanisms and devices that use certain mechanisms and things like that. So like I said, like I love mechanisms. I'm, kind of a nerd like that. And, I use them at work and that type of thing. So, and I have another book at work that's really great. And it goes into a lot of detail on a lot of these mechanisms. So a lot of times I'll just go through those books and just kind of look at them and say, hey, that's cool. I like that. I can use that. The one at work has a lot of information on 4-bar linkages. It shows a lot. There's there's so many 4-bar linkages, and it shows ones that do different things, like, that will keep parallel motion, that's used in a typewriter, that's used, all over the place. So that's a lot of where I get the ideas for mechanisms and things like that. So yeah, so it's kind of a nice segue into talking about designs and my, some tips and tricks for designing that I use. So let's see. Yeah. Okay. So some of some of my tips, and again, these are just a few that I jotted down, just things that I've come across at work and that type of thing. One of them is using your CAD software to print at 100% scale. What I mean by that is, so say I wanted to take this heart. Thank you guys all for showing up. Say I wanted to take this heart and I wanted to cut it out of plywood, or I wanted to, you know, cut it out of something, but it's very curvy. Sure, I could draw it by freehand, but it might not be the right size. It might not come out very well. Well, I can go to my CAD program and I can quickly draw this out, put some dimensions on it to get it to a certain size. And then if I print that outline at 100% scale or 1-to-1 scale, it's going to print out on my printer at the exact size that I need. And then I can basically cut it out and I can tape it down on the plywood or whatever and cut it out. And so that has been a really handy trick for me over the years. Like if I want to check dimensions on something, I can quickly sketch it out, print it out on my printer, and hold it up to whatever I'm doing and say, okay, this looks good. If I want to add some nice radiuses to something, same thing. And so that's been a really handy trick for me in terms of building things and, you know, just helping me to get things done. So like if I need to do lettering or something like that, I can do the same thing in my CAD program, and it's a really handy trick and something that I found really useful. So another tip or trick that I use a lot, and I mentioned this earlier, is magnets. So I use magnets in so many things, and I find they're a very elegant solution for a lot of the things that I'm trying to do. And for a lot of them, I'm trying to keep the electronics, you know, on the low side and that type of thing. And so like for this guy, so it's spring loaded. So there's a spring in here, which, you know, when I press it down, it latches. But if there were no magnets in here, I would push it down, it would just pop back up. So there's another very popular Neuralyzer build on YouTube. I can't remember, you know, it's got 1 million views or something like that. And when he's going through the build, I watched it a couple of times to get an idea of, you know, what was already out there and that type of thing. When he's going through the build, he takes kind of an existing, I think it's like a toothbrush that has the silver chrome, and he kind of guts it and makes it into a Neuralyzer, which is kind of cool. And he puts a spring into it. But when he shows it opening, if you look closely, you can kind of see him like holding it closed with his hand, and then he kind of just like moves it away and it pops up. So it looks really cool for the shot, but it doesn't actually, if he were to do this, it would just fall out. So it's just funny, like, you know, me having designed it, I kind of looked at that video and I could see it. But yes, Odin makes, exactly, Andy, that's the one. So go back and watch it, and you'll see what I saw, where he's just kind of holding it closed, and then he takes his hand away and it pops up. This one actually latches closed, and the way I do that is with magnets. So basically, on this piece, there's a magnet in the bottom of it, and then there's a magnet in the bottom of the base. So when I put it together, the magnets touch, the magnets are strong enough to overcome the spring force and hold it closed. So then when I pull on the lever, it basically will exert a force on the piece that moves and enough to overcome the magnets, and then the spring takes over and it pops up. And then there's actually a magnet on the top here, because otherwise it would just kind of bounce around. And so there's another magnet on the bottom that lets it latch up. So again, I love using magnets, and a lot of it's just about the balancing of the forces and getting it so that it will stay closed but not be too hard to open. Because if I made the magnet super strong, this little lever probably wouldn't be able to open it. So I use magnets in this guy. I use magnets in the bat. I'm going to be using magnets in a couple upcoming projects. So I use them a lot, and they're a really good, they're really something that's nice to design with, and you keep the electronics down, there are no batteries, that type of thing. So Chris is asking where to source magnets. So you can get some on Amazon, but they don't have a really good selection. The place, if you want a huge selection, is called K&J Magnetics. So they have a website. They have just every size of magnets you want, and shipping isn't too bad. It's maybe, I don't know, $5 or something like that, but you can get any size you want to, all different kind of forces. They even have ones that are like countersunk, so you can put a countersunk screw through them. They have square ones. It's really great. It's called K&J Magnetics. So just Google that, and you'll find a lot of different magnets there. So, all right, let's see. There's some of the questions. Captured magnets are assembled afterwards. They're assembled afterwards usually. Like I'll bond them in. I'll use epoxy, and that's another, I guess, something that I do a lot in 3D printing that I haven't seen. I've seen some people do, but not a ton of it. I see most people using like these solvents that basically just weld things together almost immediately. But one of the reasons that I like to use epoxy is that you have to mix it up, but it stays fluid for a while, so that you mix it up, you apply it, and then basically you can put your pieces together, but it's still fluid enough that I can move them around and adjust the positioning of them. And I find that's really useful when kind of putting 3D printed parts together to get the alignment just right. And so I use that also with a magnet. So like I'll put a little bit in a pocket, I'll press the magnet in, I'll wipe away any epoxy that kind of squirts out, and then the magnets are generally set pretty well. So let's see. What tolerances do you factor in when designing parts to make them together? So that's a tough one, because a lot of it depends on the different assemblies. So a lot of times I'll try to leave 10 to 15 thousandths gap between parts that need to slide together. But like for the cell phone Etch-a-Sketch, I wanted to make it, and that's why a lot of these parts are, they look big and they're coarse. I wanted to make it so that it would be easy to print. Like if you make things too small, like the gear teeth too small, they're not going to print very well on a wide range of printers. And that's something I'm also thinking about when I'm designing, because a lot of these things I want people to make them. I want people to print them. So if I make it such that you need a ridiculously good printer or resolution, then it's not going to work well for everybody. So in terms of tolerances, I'm generally leaving 10, 15 thousandths tolerance for things that need to slide, like this guy. But the reason I say it's interesting in that if I made the tolerances too sloppy on this, one thing I found was that the stylus wouldn't etch very well. When I turn the gears, the travel would just be too non-smooth, and the tolerances were too loose that it would wiggle around, and the stylus wouldn't draw a straight line. It would just wander all over the place. And so so for this guy, I had to make it tighter so that the parts would hold together better, and it would draw more like an Etch-a-Sketch. And then I got a comment the other day on Thingiverse, your tolerances are too tight. I had to do too much sanding. I'm like, I didn't respond. I was like, I could go through this whole story, but yeah, I didn't. So anyway, that was about the tolerances. I generally leave 10 to 15 thousandths unless I need tighter. So it can kind of depend on what you're doing there. Let's see. Okay, so other tips. So we talked about magnets, and then some of this is just about how I design things and what my process is. So when I come up with an idea, first thing I do is I do hand sketches, and I can't draw worth anything, but it's the easiest and best way to flesh out an idea. So if you have an idea, do some hand sketches, try to put as much thought into hand sketches as you can, think about how it's going to work, and that can tell you whether it's a project worth pursuing, or it's going to be too complicated, or it's a good way to get the ideas going. Once I have that done, and once I've done hand sketches and I'm confident that, yes, I think this will work, yes, I think I can design it, and then I'll move into CAD, and I'll start doing layout sketches in CAD. And this is basically puts real dimensions on things. And again, I'm trying to do things, quickly to take a look at it to see if I can make it work. If I think I can make it work. So if I get the CAD layout, which is basically transferring a lot of my hand sketches to CAD, if that all looks good, then basically I'm gonna move forward and really start fleshing out the details of the design. So that's kind of the process that I use to go from an idea to starting to focus on the details in CAD. Hey, I see a couple other people showing up. Hey, Brian, thanks for showing up. I really appreciate it. I'm just kind of talking about some of my tips and tricks for designing. So so that's moving from a hand sketch into CAD. And again, I'm really a big proponent of doing that, because if you just hop into CAD and start doing things, you can get really far down a path and then realize, oh wait, I missed this one aspect of the design, and I'm going to have to kind of go back to the beginning. So I find it to be a time saver. So let's see. I think there were some other questions. As a dabbler in CAD, I've used a tiny bit of Fusion 360. What's a great newbie program? Free is best price. Yeah, so I think Fusion 360 is the way to go in terms of free CAD. From all that I've seen, I've used it a little bit. It looks like it has kind of a more crowded interface, kind of like SolidWorks and things like that. But in my experience, once you start getting into it, the interface kind of starts becoming familiar, and it's less intimidating and things like that. And I think there are a ton of tutorials on Fusion 360, so that's definitely what I would recommend. I'm also considering, at some point in the future, SolidWorks, you have to pay for it usually, unless you can get it through work and that type of thing. So I'm kind of interested in doing Fusion 360 myself, and I'm really interested in, as an experienced CAD user, trying to learn it. And I kind of thought it would be fun to do hey, I'm learning Fusion 360, but I'm coming at it from the perspective of an experienced CAD user, and how do the two stack up? Does Fusion 360 have everything that SolidWorks have or not? And that was something that I thought would be interesting. It would be interesting to me. I don't know if other people would find it interesting, but let's see. Did I miss any questions? I don't think so, but just shout them back at me again if I did miss any. What is my go-to CAD program? My go-to CAD program is SolidWorks, because I've used it at work. I've been using it for, 14, 15 years. So I'm very adept at it. I can do things so much faster than if I were to try to do Fusion 360. Like I said, I'm interested in learning it eventually, but right now, where I have kind of limited time, I really just need to get things done in SolidWorks. So that's what I do. Let's see. Okay, so a couple final tips in terms of designing. So I think another important thing about CAD is just developing good habits. And I see a lot of this in the workplace, where I'll see new CAD users, they kind of learn bad habits, and they just learn things that make things a lot harder on themselves in the future, and for other engineers that I work with. So trying to learn good habits is just really important from the beginning when you're starting out CAD. And again, I think there are a lot of tutorials out there. I don't know if a lot of those tutorials teach good habits or bad habits, so I can't point you in the right direction. But one habit from SolidWorks that I've developed over the years is you have a feature tree, which is basically operations that the CAD program is executing. And when you make a feature, it just plops in a default name like extrude 1 or cut 1 or whatever. But you can rename these. And I found this to be hugely a good practice to get into. Because basically what it does is, as you're designing something, you're kind of labeling it like, okay, this is hole for magnets, or dovetail for sliding piece. Short names. I don't usually make them this long. I'll make them 2 or 3 words. But as your feature tree grows, you have kind of this history of what you've done. If you need to locate a feature, you just look and say, oh, I want the magnet holes. Oh, there it is. Instead of looking at cut 1, cut 2, cut 3, cut 4, cut 5, you don't have to click through each one of those to try to find those pockets. You just say, oh, I need the magnet pockets. Boom, right there. It saves you time. But unfortunately, it requires a discipline to just every time you make a feature, you're basically you're renaming it. So that's something that I've gotten into the habit of, and so I found that it actually saves me time in the long run, even though it takes me 5 or 10 seconds more to rename the feature. So that's just another tip that I wanted to pass on to you guys, and hopefully it helps you. Let's see. Yeah, learn to keep things as parametric. Yep, that's a great one. That's another good one for CAD. How would I always use it? Organic modeling, get less confused with CAD programs. Yeah, so that's one thing that I do see. There's basically 2 different worlds in CAD. There's the organic modeling, like sculpting, using Sculptress and Blender and things like that. And that's a very different world than the parametric CAD world, which is the world I live in. So I'm terrible at sculpting. I think the models those people do are amazing, but I'm very good at the parametric modeling. So those two crossing over is definitely an interesting thing. So I think, again, I've heard a lot of good things about Fusion 360. So I would say if you're interested in that, I would look for some very, basic beginner Fusion 360 tutorials and start with that. And hopefully that can make the CAD world less confusing. That would be my suggestion to you. If anyone else in the comments has any thoughts on that, please weigh in. Let's see. What does files mean by calling them parametric? Parametric basically means that you're attaching a parameter to something. So when you draw a rectangle, there's two dimensions, the length and the width. And basically you just assign a number to it, but what that does is it's parametric because it's not fixed. It's you can change it later on. So if you assign the length to be 10, you can later change it to 20. And so you can kind of go back and forth and iterate through your models and change that parameter to change the model. And basically the way you lay things out can affect the model. So if you're using a feature that you drew early on in the model, and that feature changes in size, it can break the model later on. So you have to be very careful about how you lay things out, and you have to think about what features you're referencing and things like that. And that's just part of the experience in doing CAD models. You're making CAD models that won't break when you change something, so you can basically go back and adjust size really quickly and easily. And that's a really powerful thing in parametric CAD modeling. So let's see. Did I miss? Nope, I think we're good. Okay, I don't think I've missed any questions so far. And my final tip and trick about designing is going to sound pretty cheesy and common sense, but simple is usually better. And this also comes as an experience thing where, and I myself fall into this trap all the time, where I'll have an idea for something and I'll just dive right in and come up with this idea that's really, really complicated. And eventually I end up just dropping back and making it simpler and simpler and simpler. And the bat is a prime example. So the way I was going to do this was really complicated. Would have taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of electronics and things like that. And the very elegant suggestion by my friend about the gas spring was perfect. And it's a beautiful example of simpler is better. And there's usually a simpler way if you step back and you think about it and that type of thing. So, all right, keyboard shortcuts are your friend in ZBrush. Print yourself a cheat sheet. It's the same thing in parametric modeling. Keyboard shortcuts can make you so much more efficient. And there's a lot. I think there's probably a lot of tutorials and a lot of things on how to set up your keyboard and that kind of stuff. And in both SolidWorks and Fusion 360, that can be a huge time saver, and it can make you much more efficient in modeling and that type of thing. So, so let's see. Okay, so I talked about tips and tricks for designing. Now I'm kind of going to completely switch gears, and I'm going to talk about strategies for smaller YouTube channels. And this is basically what one of my recent videos was about. I had kind of noticed a pattern in my analytics data for my channel, and I was curious to see if it held for other channels. So I put out a call in the 3D printing community and said, hey, if you're willing to share your traffic source data with me, give me your top 3 sources. I think I have the plot printed out here. Give me your top 3 sources for the past year. So this is mine. This is basically what I ended up sharing on Twitter and saying, hey, if you can share your data with me, I want to look at what it's like for a range of channels. And this is why I love this community. People were so nice and so generous, and just kind of gave me the information and said, here you go. I'll be interested to see what you find with them. And so I think I got 14 or 15 channels that shared that information with me, and I found some larger channels, some very big channels that had shared the data online, and I kind of put it all together and I took a look at it. And basically what I found was that for small YouTube channels, and again, this is the plot I showed, and all this stuff is in that video. For small YouTube channels, YouTube is recommending your content basically this much, anywhere from not at all, and this is for your top 2 traffic sources, to about 40%. You see none of these channels in this cluster under 2,000 subscribers are above 50%. And that's basically what I had found on my channel. YouTube is not recommending my content at all. And by recommending, I mean in suggested videos and browse features, which are 2 of the most powerful features for YouTube suggesting your content. So the 2 takeaways I found from that was there can be huge variability in the amount YouTube is recommending your content. It can be anywhere from 0% to 40% for your top 2 traffic sources, which is really important. And the second is a lot of the mid to larger channels, their content's being recommended 60, 70, 80% of the time. That's where all their traffic is coming from, is from YouTube recommending their videos. And the reason this is important is because, and I'm sure some of you have noticed this as well, if you get people to come from an external website, they're much less likely to subscribe to your channel, to want to return and watch your content, because they were on an external website doing their thing. They were reading an article, they were on Twitter, they were on Reddit. They don't want to go from Twitter to YouTube to watch videos because they wanted to be on Twitter. So they're going to either watch your video in the Twitter window, probably not hit the like button, and just move on. Maybe they'll transfer over, maybe they'll hit the like button, but they're probably not going to subscribe. So the reason it's so powerful to have YouTube suggesting your content is that these are people already on YouTube. They want to be there watching videos. They're looking for different content. So if YouTube suggests their content, they see your video, they like it. Again, you got to make good content. You can't just make crap. You got to make good content. They like your video, they're much more likely to subscribe and to like your video and to leave a comment. So that's why I thought it was so important, and why I made the video and why I wanted to share it with people, is that if you're a small YouTube channel, you can't count on YouTube suggesting your content at all. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky. I have heard of some stories where very small channels, YouTube somehow starts suggesting their video. I have seen very little evidence of that. And even the video that I made on this topic was kind of hilarious, because I got like 100 comments. 22% of the audience gave me a thumbs up, and YouTube didn't touch it at all. So like, I don't think I can make a YouTube video that gets more engagement. So basically, as I was saying, like, having YouTube recommend your content is really powerful for your channel. But if you're a small channel, you're probably not going to get that to happen. So what you need to do is you need to be out there promoting your content. Unfortunately, you need to be trying to build an audience on Twitter. You need to be, promoting your video where you can and getting other people to help you out. And again, that's where I love this community. It's so supportive, people helping each other out. Like, a lot of people here have other channels. They're here just because they're really nice and they're, supporting me and just being very generous with their time, which I really appreciate. And again, so that was one of the other messages from that video was, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, because a lot of everybody here is from 3D printing. But if you're in a different area like gaming or whatever, there's probably a huge community out there that you can tap into and hopefully get people to help you, and you can help them as well. And so that was another big takeaway from that video that I made. So you got to be out there promoting your content, join the community, and just try to get to that point where YouTube will start recommending your content. And that's kind of the big question, is when is that? And I didn't really touch that at all in the video, because I don't have any data on that. So everything I'm saying now is basically speculation. But there have been some other channels that have had videos on this subject. And one of them was Fran Labs. So she was a channel where she had, I think, 60,000 subscribers, and she was not monetized. So she was basically just making videos, and she didn't want to monetize them because she wanted people to watch them ad-free. But basically in April of this year, and she has a very good video of this where she does something similar where she shows a lot of her plots and she shows what happens. But basically in April of this year, she noticed that her traffic took a huge dive. And when she looked deeper, she noticed that YouTube wasn't recommending her content anymore. And so it became clear to her that something happened in that April time. And a lot of people were commenting that they thought it was because she wasn't monetized, and that in that April timeframe, they must have made an algorithm change that if you're not a monetized channel, you probably get suggested a lot less. And that definitely matches with what I found in this data. And I kind of think it's probably true that if you're monetized, YouTube will probably suggest your content a lot more. And it makes sense to me because it's a business. You know, YouTube needs to make money to keep their servers running. And I mean, if you think about it, like the amount of video that people are uploading to them and they're having to serve and that type of thing is just, it's mind-boggling. So they need to make money to keep the server running, to keep people working at YouTube, whatever. So that's where I and again, this is all speculation, I bet you that being a monetized channel is a much bigger advantage than being a non-monetized channel, which unfortunately is what happens when you're a small YouTube channel, because you have to meet that 1,000 subscriber and 240,000 minutes of watch time. So I have a feeling once you get to that hurdle, and again, you got to make good content, then YouTube will start probably suggesting your videos more. And so I'm going to be really interested to see personally if that happens for me. Unfortunately, like my watch time is very low, which is part of why I'm doing this stream, to try to get more watch time. So thank you again. Because, you know, my videos are relatively short. Again, I'm getting a lot of external traffic where people are just kind of skipping through the video and moving on. So I'm not getting a lot of people watching huge amounts of the video. So you got to get through those hurdles, and I'll be really interested to see if that makes a difference for me. And I will definitely do a video on that, probably one way or the other, because, you know, hopefully, well, not hopefully, but, you know, if my speculation is true, then it should show in the data and I'll be able to share that with people. But unfortunately, it kind of does make a catch-22. And I've argued with Chris about this on Twitter a little bit, I guess. So we'll probably start arguing again. But it kind of makes a catch-22 because in order to get YouTube to share your videos and whatnot, you need to be a big enough channel. But in order to be a big enough channel, you need to have had YouTube sharing your content to get the watch time. So it kind of puts you in this situation where, again, you have to be out there promoting your stuff like crazy and getting enough watch time so you can get monetized. So then YouTube will suggest your content to help you grow. So that's a lot of talking. Hopefully that made sense to people, and hopefully it's helpful if you're a smaller YouTube channel. Kind of gives you an idea of, you know, maybe what you need to do. Again, I'd recommend going to watch my other video that it shows a lot more of the data, and it basically shows things you can do as a viewer and as a YouTube content creator. So you guys have any questions about that? You know, let me know. I never talk this much, so my voice is feeling it. And we're getting close to an hour, which is good. So I kind of figured out the things I wanted to talk about, I guess, in a good way. So, all right, let's see. Let's see. When's the next stream? Oh, I don't know. I wanted to see how this one went. So you guys tell me, did the stream go well, or I'll definitely do another one. It's a little bit harder for me because, you know, I have a young son. And so, you know, a lot of the evenings are spent with him and putting him to bed and things like that. And, you know, my wife's actually expecting too. So I have another one on the way very shortly. So things like this are kind of probably few and far between. You know, I'm on a break for Christmas and things like that. So I was able to do this. But, you know, I'd definitely love to do another one if you guys are interested. So did I miss any questions? Let's see. Let's see. A real life hoverboard. I would love to do that. That's great. I did see one where I think it was some big company that sponsored this, but they made a magnetic one See, but they made it in a skate park where they built magnets into the ground. So, you know, it wouldn't work anywhere else, but it did work within the skate park, which I thought was pretty cool. You can probably find it somewhere on YouTube. Let's see. And of course, oh yeah. Yeah, no, I would definitely like to do a you know, a Friday night 3D printing hangout. So just, you know, let me know. That would be great. Let's see. Let's see. Once a month. Yeah. Maybe, again, like it's probably going to get yeah, Lexus, that was it. Yep. Yeah, it's going to get crazy for me in a month or two when my next child is born. So, but yeah, no, I'll definitely, since you guys enjoyed it, and you know, I enjoyed talking about it, and hopefully it was useful. You know, I'll definitely try to do another one soon. So, oh, definitely, that'd be great. Awesome. You guys have any final questions before I sign off? No problem. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Again, it's I love this community so much. I probably would have stopped doing it a long time ago if it hadn't been for the support of, you know, people in the community and things like that. So thank you again, and yeah, I'll you know, I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you in the next stream. So thanks again. See you later.